Hi everyone, you're listening to the First Year Decoded podcast hosted by IEEE of T, the show that decodes the first year experience by providing valuable insights and experience from current engineering students. I'm your host, Brittany Chow, a Track 1 EC222 and one of the logistics directors at IEEE of T. Along with producer Akinori Kimura, we will explore various topics of academia and professional development to help you succeed in your first year of engineering. For this episode of our First Year Decoded podcast, we are going to be talking about being involved with school. There are so many design teams at U of T, as well as hackathons hosted in the GTA. Sometimes it almost seems like everyone around you is involved in something. So what if you don't know which design team to join? What if you aren't too sure if a hackathon is for you? Well, don't worry, we've invited Rocco Ruan and EngSci 222 and Jun Ho Sung and EC222 to speak on their experiences with design teams, clubs, hackathons, and side projects. Hey guys, thanks for coming on our show today. Why don't we start with you guys introducing yourself? Jun Ho, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. Thank you guys for inviting me again today. So my name is Jun Ho Sung and I'm in EC2T2, so I'm in third year now.
I'm Rocco. I'm an EngSci 2T2, so also going into third year.
Sounds good. So for today's episode, we're going to be discussing how clubs and design teams and hackathons can potentially help you grow as a first-year engineer. So, Rocco, in your first year, did you join any clubs or design teams?
Yeah. So in first year, I joined UTAT Space Systems, which is a club that builds satellite. I also played Ultimate.
Yeah, so I joined UTAT, so that's the University of Toronto Aerospace team. Back then it was the UAV division, so the Unmanned Aerial Vehicles division. Now it's called the Unmanned Aerial Systems, so UAS. And I joined the University of Toronto Formula Racing team, so UTFR. And I joined the archery club, which I am off and on.
That's very cool. Archery, I've actually never heard of the archery club from UFT. It's pretty interesting. Were you guys...
It's hard to find.
Yeah. Were you guys intimidated to join design teams at first? Because I definitely was kind of intimidated.
I think I was a little bit. I feel like sort of a general perception in first year is that you're scared of joining design teams because you're afraid that you won't have time. And also, I personally was a little bit intimidated just because people on design teams seem like they know what they're doing. And coming in first year, I didn't really feel like I knew what I was doing too much. So I was a little intimidated by that as well.
Yeah, I remember because I didn't know any coding, didn't know. I was the least technical person ever to join any design teams. I tried out UTFR as well. I guess I was also trying to balance my school, and I wasn't that interested in cars per se. I just joined to see if I spark interest there. So it was just I didn't end up staying in that club, but I would say the main reason that I kind of just didn't continue was because I was just intimidated to ask questions or just get the resources out from the senior members.
Yeah, I was also on UTFR. So yeah, first year I was trying to be really proactive with trying to join. So even if it was intimidating, because as three of you said, it seemed like they all know what they're doing, and meanwhile compared to them, you are just like a little sapling. But I tried to embrace that, and I tried to learn as much as I could in first year. So I think now I can proudly say that I am one of those people.
Yeah, I guess I also wasn't personally dedicated enough to the club that I would go out of my way to learn, but I've actually observed a lot of my friends, perhaps not UTFR, but other clubs, that they started off not knowing anything, but then they just had a passion. And then they were at the club a lot of the times, working on it, and then they do some of their own research on the side, and now they're like one of those senior members. And some of them even started off late. So I definitely think it's something that you can build on.
For sure. I think it's if you're part of some kind of organization or club or activity that you have some kind of passion for, or for an example, you find a club that you really enjoy being around its members, for an example, I think that like regardless of like how you enjoy it or why you enjoy it, if you enjoy what you're doing, you'll find it a lot easier to sort of pick up things and learn compared to if you're just like forcing yourself. That's kind of something I found throughout the last 2 years, I would say.
Would you guys say you contributed a lot during first year? Because, like, since we just mentioned that some people don't have a lot of skills, I guess one thing is how big of a role they take in the club. Like, how much are they able to contribute?
Yeah, so realistically, you can't do much, right? Because you know nothing. But teams, if they have a well structured like recruitment period, they will have a way for you to slowly ease in yourself to the team's workflow. So for example, let's just use the Formula Racing team. They will have you start off with just with just simple manufacturing tasks. So let's say sanding molds for their carbon fiber wings. They will have a few training workshops where you come and then they teach you how to do carbon fiber layups. And for UTAT, so if we are part of the UAS division, the software team in UAS would teach you how to do some basic coding and use Git, for example. That would be another thing that they would teach you. But yeah, so first semester, I would say would be mostly used for your training. And then design will come a bit later when you have much more experience with all the other manufacturing stuff.
I kind of wanted to add on to that a little bit. I would, at least personally, speaking from my own experience, I would kind of recommend not feeling like you necessarily won't be doing anything in a design team by virtue of being a first year. Because, for an example, in my experience with UTAT, I was definitely sort of thrown into a project where my lead gave me and my team members a lot of sort of responsibility, which could be good or bad depending on your level of comfort and confidence. But if you're looking for, if let's say you're super ambitious and you are already skilled, for an example, or maybe you're not skilled, but you're just really looking to contribute, I don't think any club will bar you from looking for, from like contributing in more or less meaningful ways. The fact that you're a first year, it's more dependent on just what you're looking for, I would say.
For sure. Yeah. So I'm assuming that you guys have continued some of these clubs or design teams throughout first and second year. So I'm just wondering how different is the summer and semester commitment level? Because let's say for us, IEEE, for the summer, we're definitely trying to grind out most of our work during the summer, so we don't have to do as much during the semester. But I know that for some design teams, it might be different. It might be when they get closer to the season, they'll start doing some more things, or yeah, something like that.
I would say, at least in my experience, that's pretty club dependent or team dependent. For an example, I know that UTAT Space Systems is a lot of work over the summer, especially if you're in Toronto during the summer. Barring any worldwide pandemics, there's a lot of work that gets done, and even now they're doing a lot of work.
Yeah. Yeah. As Rocco said, I think it's definitely team dependent. So different teams have different development cycles. So for example, if you are a team like Formula or a team like UAS who go to competitions every year, then you have a yearly development cycle where you design and manufacture within the scope of a year, which in itself is a big challenge. That means usually in the summer you will have your design like 70-80% done, and so that during the year, so during the first and second semester, you can already start manufacturing, because of time you can't really design starting semester one and then manufacture the entire thing during the rest of the time. That's just simply impossible. So yeah, if the team has a yearly development cycle, usually they will have a lot of their design done throughout the summer, and usually during the summer they change around their leadership structure and do all the administrative changes, so that incoming first years like you to T4s don't really feel the change in the team structure a lot.
I see. So yeah, I think that's reasonable, getting more of the logistics stuff done during the summer. Yeah. So obviously you guys have gained a good amount of technical skills through these design teams, right? But I can imagine probably soft skills also important. So I'm just wondering, what are like kind of like the top soft or technical skills you have learned from like your more focused club? Let's say, like for me, I'd say from IEEE, I learned a lot about getting things done, because our club has this culture where, let's say I ask a senior member for this document or design, and I would fully expect it to be done like, let's say in 3 days or something, but then they'll be like, okay, half an hour, and then they're like, okay, how does this look? At the beginning of joining the club, I was very surprised because I don't know, I haven't really had experience with people that just does work when you ask them to, you know? So I guess that's one thing I really learned, to just kind of like do things, like just do it, like from my club.
I would say obviously it depends what you're looking for and what design teams you join, right? So, and what sort of positions that you end up in. So for an example, if you join UTAT Space Systems or any of the UTATs as as like an electrical team member, then you're going to learn about electrical stuff. If you join as a software team member, you're going to learn about software stuff. But I would say that the sort of technical skills and the sort of methodology that you learn from design teams is one that you don't necessarily get from school, because knowing like in theory, like, okay, I can calculate all the sort of important values in this circuit, is definitely different from, for example, oh, I know that I need 24 volts here. I know I need 5 volts here, and I know that that's a big jump, so that I should probably use like a buck converter instead of a linear regulator. Like that's like stuff that school might not necessarily teach you. Stuff that's less sort of theory centric and more practical. With respect to soft skills, I think you could learn a lot depending on what club you're in. But one sort of, I don't know if this is really a skill, but it's more that I think that on design teams especially, and just other extracurriculars, you'll find people that are sort of super passionate. Like the most passionate people will often find themselves on design teams and on various like extracurricular organizations. And I think being around those people, at least personally, made me feel like I had to feel more motivated to improve. Like seeing all of these like incredibly smart, incredibly hardworking and humble people just like doing stuff that they loved made me feel like, hey, like I should do that too. And I think it's sort of pushed me to be better than I otherwise would have.
So yeah, in terms of what I've gained is I have joined the software division at former UAV, currently UAS at UTAT. Is that I have definitely learned to code. Yeah, so depending on the team, of course, you'll be using either C, C++, Python usually. in some rarer cases you may use Java, but yeah, usually it will be C++ because that is a very nice versatile language that is used in systems as well. So because most because most design teams do some robotics aspect, you will most likely be using C++ at some point. But yeah, that's what I've done. And in terms of soft skills, as Brenny said, you definitely learn how to just get the job done. And so yeah, you get to learn that you can't really be the member of a group project that doesn't really do anything. If you're in a design team, then like what's the point? You are there on your own initiative. So yeah, most people will be doing something, and if they say they're gonna do something, it will most likely be done in a very reasonable amount of time. So yeah, being part of a design team, you will definitely learn how to just I guess churn out work. It doesn't really sound good, but it's definitely a really valuable skill to have. So instead of just getting stuck at one point and just pushing it back for a long time, you will actually learn how to find your resources. If you're stuck, you will find how to find help from other people, how to find help online, and to get the work done is a very good soft skill you will learn in a design team.
Yeah, because sometimes there's really no excuses. Like, you're just procrastinating. Like, you're saying, "Oh, I can't find this," but there's always resources. There's people out there that you can ask. And yeah, just not using that excuse and just doing the work. I just think that's very valuable for sure. Yeah. So, Junho, you mentioned that you were on a drone division, and I know that you're working at a drone company right now from what we were talking about before the interview. Do you think that being on the UTAT team kind of like helped you get this position?
Oh yeah, definitely. So at most design teams, you will usually work at some point in industry that has to do with your design team. So for example, in UTFR, so the Formula Racing team, you will see a lot of people that have worked in companies like Magna, which is a parts manufacturing company. Some people have worked at Formula Racing teams. So you may have the chance to work at a racing team if you are very diligent to know about all the racing car stuff. And as Brenny mentioned, if you are part of UTAT UAS, you or any other UTAT division to say, you will have a chance, if you are very diligent again, to work in the aerospace industry. So a lot of people will be working at a drone company, as Brenny said. Some people will work at a satellite internet delivery company, and all that jazz. Yeah, so definitely definitely contributing to a design team will give you a good chance of being like noticed at a company in your industry that you're working in the design team of.
Yeah, so what you were doing in UTAT, is it similar to what you were doing this summer with your drone company?
Oh yeah, definitely to some extent, because yeah, it is a design team, so it is different from what you would do in industry and the design cycle and the design ethics that everyone has and the design philosophy that the company has. It will definitely be different from what you are doing currently at your design team, but the theoretical aspects specifically will be pretty similar to what you're doing at your design club. So it will be a very good chance to learn about what you would have to do to get further into the industry. And also, if you are lucky enough, you will also be able to bring something back to the design team that you learned from working. So if that is your goal, that is absolutely a useful thing to do.
So for Rocco, what skills specifically that you learned from, I guess, your design teams or clubs that you think you brought to your startup this year?
Well, not my startup, to be clear. I'm just working at a startup. But I would say that definitely the sort of so I work at a software company, and my sort of extracurricular experiences have not necessarily been exactly software. There is some crossover. Like there's some concepts that I learned, for example, through another club I'm part of, Robotics for Space Exploration. Um, there's some sort of technical knowledge that definitely carried over. But I would say a big thing was sort of understanding the engineering design process a little bit more. For an example, in UTAT space systems, we would do a lot of testing, a lot of quite rigorous testing of like the sort of thermal or electrical or what have you components of a satellite. Um, and so understanding the sort of way to think about developing experiments and developing tests definitely helped me at my job this summer, for example, when I was developing tests for new features or trying to come up with experiments to collect data to optimize certain parameters um, in the sort of software stack that I was working on, that I still am working on. Still have a week.
Okay, before we move on to talking about hackathons, I just want to mention that design teams is not necessarily something for everyone, and it is a lot of time commitment level, and you might want to prioritize other things like your social life or your academics, and so you don't have to join a design team, and you might not even find that like, oh, you think the club is cool because they're doing space stuff or like car stuff, but you might find out like what they actually do on a day-to-day basis. You might not enjoy that aspect as much, but like there is like how Rocco and Jun Ho mentioned, like a lot of benefit and like connections that you can get from working in a design team. And I just wanted to wrap this section up by asking, like, what's your favorite moment from your experience in the design team?
Oh, yeah, it's hard to choose. There's a lot, but I would say going to a competition that your design team participates in is one of the best experiences you will have at a design team. And just going to see the baby you worked on for the past year to unleash all its power, and and just to see how it fares against other teams is definitely an experience that you will find hard to find elsewhere. So yeah, it's definitely one of the best experiences to just go and to see how your things have been working, and just the experience of going with your team and just having fun for a few days to a week, even more in some cases, is very very appealing, I guess, as well. Yeah. So just having barbecues at some point, cooking for your team, and just living in the same space with your team for a few days is kind of like going on a school trip, which is very, very fun as well. Yeah.
I guess personally, I would say the most fun experience that comes to mind for me is with robotics for space exploration. At some point, we had a deadline that was supposed to be midnight, but I believe it was in a time zone that made it so for us it was 4 a.m. And
Oh no.
we unfortunately had some technical issues with some parts that we bought. And so our rover, which is like the main thing that the club builds, was not working the way we wanted it to. So we just stayed up all night working on it. to meet this deadline. And it was like, it doesn't sound fun. Like we were like all super like delirious from a lack of sleep, and we're all working really hard to get this thing to work. But it definitely, I think, was fun. Just like the experience of like working hard at something that you care about with people that you like. Yeah, I'd say it's like very like a cornerstone of my university experience thus far. And I just wanted to sort of throw something in as like a final thought about design teams in response to something that Aki said. So you mentioned that design teams might not necessarily be for everyone, but that it might be a good experience. And I kind of wanted to address a concern that some people might have, which is I don't know what I'm interested in, or I don't know if design teams are for me, so I don't know what I should do, or I don't know which design team is for me. And I think the answer to that question is just if you have any slight interest in a club, just show up to a couple of meetings and see whether you like it or not. Even if it's like way like if like in the beginning of the first semester, you're showing up to like 5 different club meetings for the first week, that's okay because you don't have to continue with all of them. For an example, I was also at that Formula Racing meeting that Aki and Jun Ho mentioned. I also watched the sort of upper years at the time show us all the parts. I never showed up again. Nobody hunted me down and asked me why I wasn't showing up. Nobody hated me afterward because I reneged on my commitment to UTFR. But yeah, so it's like you're not really. Everyone understands that design teams are a huge commitment, so it's chill if you show up to something for a while and then decide you don't want to show up anymore. So considering that it's zero commitment, yeah, just in the beginning, just try a bunch of different things is what I would say.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Yeah. But yeah, make sure that if you do leave, if you have a large responsibility, so let's say if you were working on a project and you want to leave, just do mention it because
yeah.
Yeah, because that can become a big issue if you don't mention it to anyone and just leave.
Yeah.
And then no one knows.
For sure. It's like different things we're talking about. Yeah. Cool.
Okay, let's talk about hackathons.
Amazing. Let's move on to hackathons. So I just want a startup question. How many hackathons have you guys each attended before? Including makeathons.
Yeah, I have attended to 2 hackathons. So one was a makeathon run by IEEE called Make U of T, and another one was called Delta Hacks, which was in McMaster University.
I am just now realizing that I think I've been to 3 full hackathons. I've been to I did UTech, University of Toronto Engineering competition, spelled with a K.
Yep, with a K.
Yeah, I did SEEK, which is a rover design competition run by RSX, Robotics for Space Exploration, and I did. Recently, I participated in Johns Hopkins University's COVID-19 challenge, which was an online hackathon.
I guess the question I have is like, what was your first experience? Your experiencing your first hackathon. What kind of skill levels did you have at that point, and like, what were you able to make?
My first experience was UTech, and I feel like I wasn't super. I didn't have a lot of technical experience at the time, and I think I got kind of lucky with UTech because they had this junior design category, which sort of assumed that you wouldn't have much technical experience, and gave you the opportunity to build out rather than like a completely working product, a prototype for a product using stuff like cardboard and tape and glue and stuff like that. And so we built out a concept for a automated parking garage, which might not be the most impressive thing in the world, but at the time it felt good. and it was definitely a good experience.
Yeah. My first hackathon was Delta Hacks, which I think was late 2019 or very early 2020. I, I forget. It may have been like January or February, right before COVID happened. But yeah, my application, I wouldn't say was very. I wouldn't say that it was very, what's the word? Very impressive, but what I did make sure was that I did put in effort in making my application. So I had a resume done from first year, and I did work on it. I updated my resume to have all my experiences and to have any projects. I guess this also leads to the design teams. Going into the design teams does make a resume look pretty good, to be honest. But yeah, that definitely does help for your application at a hackathon, I would say.
I feel like most people underestimate like how much like effort they need to put into the application for a hackathon, because I mean on IEEE last year I was helping the Make UFT team do the application review. So I guess one thing to say is like usually the general tip to applying to like hackathons, if you don't have that much experience, would be to apply early and to usually like put extra effort in, because you already don't have the impressive resume, you don't have the cool experiences. The only thing you can beat other people in is your enthusiasm. And we saw lots of we had like thousands of applicants, so we were like looking through them, and the difference between a person that put 1 line for their application, person that put 5 lines, like it's a huge difference. Like if their experience is relatively the same, of course everyone's going to choose the people that put the effort in, because to us, like the people holding the event, we want people that actually want to participate in these events. And sometimes we can only tell by their application. So that's one tip I would give for people that has never been to a hackathon and really want to just try out one.
Yeah, definitely don't just half-ass your application.
Yeah.
at any point, yeah. But I guess to people that don't know, in a hackathon application, each hackathon usually has a main theme to it. So Make UFT is hardware, and I think it was connectivity, the themes. So they will have a few questions that have to do with that theme, and sometimes about your experience as well. So make sure to, not, as Brenny said, make sure to not just write 1 line, because people do read your application, and if you just half-ass it, you most likely won't get in. But yeah, another thing is that just like design teams, hackathons aren't everyone's cup of tea, and the designing for 24 hours straight, even more in some cases, is very taxing. And before COVID or after social distancing, you will be in a place that is not your home. You will be staying there for 24 hours, and that is also very uncomfortable as well. And just the experience of designing 24 hours at some point doesn't become very efficient as well. So it's to be brutally honest, it's not very healthy, and I don't think it's a very healthy culture that design people, so engineers and programmers, have. But it is a type of experience and sort of skill gauging competition you can have.
For sure, you don't have to feel pressure to go to a hackathon. I would definitely say though, like it's a cool experience. Like I attended New Hacks, which is one of IEEE's like beginner hackathons. So it was less intimidating for me because I didn't have to actually like feel like everyone around me was doing something super present. Like everyone were starters. But I would say it was very tiring, but it was also very fun in a sense because you can talk about the hackathon experience you had, and you can talk about the things that you learned. Like I think I started doing web dev because of that hackathon. Like I had to do the web dev for my team, and then from there I kind of figured that, oh, this is pretty fun, and then now I like try and do my own website on the side on my own because I know it's something doable. Like yeah. Right? Like sometimes in 24 hours you can do more than you expect, and sometimes it's that like, wow, I did this in 24 hours, kind of like just make you more excited about things and more excited about your potential. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Just as a random tidbit here, I know we're talking a lot about how good design teams are for your resume and how good hackathons are for your resume. But we're also saying, hey, don't do design teams if you don't want to, or, don't do hackathons if you don't want to. And sort of potential like thought that someone might have, I think, is like, hey, what gives? Like, if I want to be like competitive in an industry, don't I have to do like design teams or hackathons or whatever? Like, don't like isn't it like a requirement if I want to stand out from other people? And I would say like yeah, it's definitely nice, right? Like, don't get me wrong. If you're applying, for an example, to a space-related job and you spent some time on a space-related design team, that's obviously good. But I wouldn't push yourself to do something that you don't enjoy. One, because um, you're not going to get as much out of it if you don't enjoy it. And two, because I think especially in COVID, there's sort of like unorthodox ways that you can maybe think of to develop your skills. That might not necessarily be design teams and hackathons if you don't like that kind of thing. For an example, I'm gonna like shamelessly self-plug myself a little bit here. But I recently decided, hey, like design teams are great. I love some of the design teams I'm in, but I sort of wanted to work on something that was completely my own outside of design teams and a bit sort of less regimented and more creative. So I started a Twitch channel where I build robots, and I've been doing it for 2 or 3 weeks now, and I feel like it's probably one of the um, cooler experiences that I've had in terms of just being able to do something on my own and enjoy it, and also feel like I'm being productive without necessarily falling into like the usual, oh, I'm doing a design team for my resume, or if I'm doing a hackathon for my resume. Yeah, so if anyone's interested in that, I hate self-promoting, but you can check me out at www.twitch.tv/KiriBuilds, Kiri builds. Name subject to change. Okay, I'm done.
Nice.
No more self-promotion for the rest of the podcast.
No worries. I definitely agree with what you just said, though. Sometimes a key thing is whether you're doing a design team for a resume or you actually like it, it makes a big difference in your motivation, in like how other people can see you sometimes, because you'll think like, oh, they'll never know that I'm just doing this for a resume, but your actions can tell sometimes.
Yeah,
but,
they'll know.
Yeah,
know.
for sure.
And
doing side project is really cool. And I think if you like, it's not your cup of tea, design teams and hackathons, like doing something on your own is definitely really impressive. Like, and you get to call it like yours,
right.
Like you did it completely on your own. Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely. So yeah, having a hobby related to your discipline, I think is also very very fun. So as Rocco said, you could say that his hobby is Twitch streaming. So streaming his robotics project is a really good push for him to have motivation to do something other than design teams and hackathons, and that could be added to your resume, right? Because even if we are saying that, oh yeah, don't do it because you don't have to force yourself to do it for your resume, but it is important to have a good resume. So having a hobby. So for example, for me right now, I'm 3D printing a mechanical clock that sort of ticks around, I guess. So yeah, that has also been a really cool and fun experience. Although it doesn't have to do directly with ECE. It is sort of an engineering project, I guess, and it has helped me with my summer internship because I have had to print some prototypes for the design I've done. So yeah, having a hobby that you can use elsewhere, and that you can put in your resume is also extremely important to have, other than just your standard design team and hackathon experience. But yeah, I guess I will plug myself as well.
Oh, let's
yeah.
go.
So I have also been streaming myself on and off. Hell yeah. So yeah. But I am planning on just streaming myself solving some, I guess, lead code problems, and just streaming myself just coding a little bit. But yeah, it's also on Twitch, and I am planning to do it much more frequently. And the link is twitch.tv/Jungineer. So Jun Gineer, like engineer, but take the E.
Very creative. Yeah, I feel like at this point, one question that the listeners might have is, wow, like you're doing school, you're doing like 10,000 design teams, you're doing your own side projects, and you're still doing hackathons. Like, how do you do it? Because, like, sometimes school is intensive enough, and don't get me wrong, keep your priorities straight. If you want to focus on school, focus on school. But if you think the experience are more important to you, I would suggest, like, just go ahead and do it. Like, some people just want to pass and they want to do like many other design teams, and I think that's fair. But yeah, how do you guys do it? Like, what's your main like method of balancing your time and like making time for these activities?
Oh yeah. So yeah, as Brenny just said, it is your utmost priority to pass your school and to not get expelled for not having good enough grades. But yeah, it is a running joke in many design teams that when you join, your grades will drop, and that is true to some extent. But it always just depends on what you are doing. But yeah, but I also want to reiterate that good grades aren't everything. So a good design team experience will sort of outdo a slight dip in grades. So just going from an average 80% to an average 70%, but having a really good design team experience will outweigh that 100%. But do make sure that a lot of big companies actually do have cutoff grades. So just make sure that you are going above that if you are planning to aim for those companies.
I would agree. So there are situations where grades are important. For an example, you need grades to stay in school, and you need your degree eventually if you plan to work in engineering. And also, for example, let's say your goal is grad school. Then grades are extra important for your grad school applications. But I guess and like Junho said, like with design teams, we're talking about them like a significant time commitment because they are, and so they will affect your grades, or like they can, depending on how much time you put into your design team. But when I was in first year, there was an upper year member of UTAT that was giving a presentation, and he said something that sort of shaped my outlook on this sort of time management subject, which is that like he was the guy I'm talking about was a mechanical lead on the team. And so he said, hey, this weekend I could spend 5 hours studying for my quiz that's worth 5%, or I could do the mechanical simulations for this satellite that I'm for this like satellite chassis that I've been designing. And like he said, I feel like the sort of experiences that I'll get from doing what I'm doing with UTAT or any other design team outweigh the sort of like, for an example, like 1% different on my average that I will, or sorry, 1% difference on my sort of course mark that I'll lose out on because if I didn't do those things. So I'd say it's sort of a matter of deciding what you're going to learn most from. At the end of the day, the grade that you end up with in a course might not necessarily be exactly reflective of what you've learned from it. So I feel like as long as you're learning what you need to learn from your courses, as long as you're maximizing your learning, whether it's from design teams or from courses, and you're passing, it might be a good idea to think about stuff other than school.
Yeah. So yeah, I sort of forgot to answer the original question about actually how to time manage, but
That's true. Yeah, we're kind of just talking about why.
yeah.
Oops.
So I guess now that the why is out of the way, we can talk about the how. But yeah, if you do have other things that you are doing, so let's say if you are gaming 3 hours a day, watching YouTube, watching a TV show 3 hours a day, you will definitely have to reduce that because you physically can't do school, do all your entertainment, leisure, and do design teams all in a week's time. If you do that and you want to do all that other stuff, you'll lose on sleep. And if you lose on sleep, everything starts to fall. And I really want to emphasize that. So make sure that you don't lose too much sleep during the semester because that is a very good sort of gateway to your mental health falling and your health falling, and in turn your grades and other things in your life slowly falling apart. But yeah, other than the serious things, so this thing apart. Another thing is blocking your time. So blocking your time is really useful because you will have an idea of how to use your time throughout the day, and if a really good advantage of this is that since you will know how to use your day, you will also have a good idea of when to use your leisure. And on the contrary, if you don't do this, you will accidentally watch too much YouTube. You will accidentally study for this one subject too much, so you won't have time to study for this other subject that has the same course percentage as this test. So yeah, make sure that you block your time, and that will be very useful for you to manage your time.
I guess I wanted to sort of jump off on some of the stuff that you said, Jun Ho. I definitely agree that it's important to use your time efficiently, but I also don't want to make it sound like, at least personally, it might sound like, and my friends tell me sometimes, "Oh, Rocco, you're involved in so much stuff. How do you do it?" Um, and like from the outside looking in, it might seem like, um, this guy probably like works like 90 hours a week and just like never sleeps or like never plays games or never does anything fun ever. He's just always grinding all the time. And the thing is, I don't really feel that way. Um, and I don't think that's a sustainable sort of attitude to have either, because like you need to have like you can't be playing games for 3 hours a day, but you need to have sort of mental health breaks and like recreational time. And I think that kind of goes back to our point about making sure the things you do are things that you enjoy. For an example, um, when I was staying up late until 4 a.m. working on our rover for RSX, while I was doing it, I didn't feel like, oh, this is like the same as like another course. This is so much work. I'm so tired. I just want to go home. This sucks. Like I was enjoying it because I was, around people that I liked doing something that I love. And the same thing kind of goes with Ultimate. Like even though like other people might be like, hey, what are you doing? Like playing in an Ultimate game like the day before a midterm. I would say, well, I'm like physically, I'm definitely not going to study the entire weekend. It's just not something that I personally can do. So just taking out a couple hours to go play some Ultimate. So like, I guess for me, like playing sports is like a sort of like a good um, break or distraction from school because while you're playing sports, you're not thinking about anything else. Um, and so having that sort of I think like at least for me personally, it was a pretty efficient use of time because um, I was getting in my sort of recreation while also keeping fit, while also being able to interact with my friends and also developing some soft skills. Um, so okay, this was kind of a long tangent, but I think the message I'm trying to get across is don't feel like everything has to be depressing. Rather, try to find things that are quote unquote productive, um, or at the very least fulfilling, that are also enjoyable. And that way you'll find it much easier to manage your time than if you are spending, 12 hours, 16 hours a day doing things that you don't like.
Yeah, I agree. If you like something, you would honestly make time for it. Some people would be like, wow, you're doing so many projects. Like, you must be hardworking, like you guys just mentioned. But because you like it so much, to you, that is your leisure time. Like, you're just thinking about it the whole time. So it's not stressful for you to do it. Therefore, it is not something that's, like, just making you, like, doing extra work. Like, you're just doing something fun on the side. So I would definitely say that sometimes you just gotta go out of your way and make time for like these experiences to actually determine whether you like it. Like if you made time for it and you absolutely hate it, then don't continue it. Like because then it's not truly for you. Yeah, for sure. So just to wrap this up, I would like to ask you guys for one last like quick tip, small tip for the first years that you would give for the first years.
Yeah. I guess just to add to what Bernie has said, my mom likes to say, you can make time for anything, and I think that's absolutely true. So you can make time for your recreational activities. So for example, I like to go to do archery, and I like to play games definitely. So yeah, I can do all that, but also to spend some time going to the design team and to study for some of my tests. So yeah, I would like to emphasize to anyone listening that you can definitely make time to do everything you want. You just need to make sure that you don't overdo one thing too much. Yeah. So in terms of the tip I have is to just enjoy first year, and that it's sort of your year that you get to try everything. And I think your courses that you have in first year definitely show that as well. So don't be afraid to try out many new things, and it's okay if it doesn't work out for you. Don't feel guilty that you stopped something because it wasn't your cup of tea. But yeah, definitely try to do as much as you can, because if when you go to upper years, you will have less time to try new things, and it may be too late for you to move into another thing because you have been doing this one thing that you didn't really like for this long time. So yeah, make sure that you spend your time during first year wisely in sort of trying many things out, and I think that's my one tip for first years.
I think my sort of tip, or maybe just like an idea that I want to throw out there, is that we or I guess like I'll start out by saying it and I'll explain it a bit. I would say my tip is try not to fall into the trap of measuring your success the same way that, like, for an example, other people measure their success, or how like you might feel like you're supposed to measure your success as an engineering student. So we've been talking about extracurriculars a lot as sort of a way to make yourself stand out, like design teams, and like hackathons, make your resume look good. I just wanted to emphasize that you don't necessarily have to choose your design teams or other extracurriculars based on what you think is the most productive. Even if you sort of decide to choose something that might seem completely unrelated, oh, this teaches me nothing about the field that I want to work in. For an example, I know some people are really involved in school dance club, or school strategy game club, or Iron Dragons, the Dragon Boat team at U of T. Like, those things might not seem super related to what you're doing, but in a way, I think that as long as you're doing something you enjoy, you'll find that it helps you in unexpected ways, whether it's sort of improving your mental health, or by making you a more interesting person to talk to, or giving you sort of like soft skills in areas that you wouldn't expect to be applicable. I think personally, in my experience, the people that I talk to that are like the most interesting to talk to, the most like inspiring, are always the people that do things that they enjoy.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I feel like I've said this a lot throughout this sort of podcast, but I think it's super important to do things that you enjoy and try to find the things that you enjoy. And yeah, take some risks in first year to sort of look for those things.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much for being here today.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, I feel like I guess the tips you guys gave and the experience you guys shared from your design teams and hackathons would probably help the first years more on choosing like the design teams they join, or choosing whether they want to do some things or not. So yeah, thank you guys once again for being here with us today and doing this podcast with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, that's all for today's episode of First Year Decoded. Thanks for listening, and thank you to Jun Ho and Rocco for joining me today. Tune in next episode to get a full breakdown on how to study for the midterms that are coming up.